He survived the bloodiest battles of World War II, but not the quiet skies of Virginia. Audie Murphy, America's most decorated war hero and beloved Hollywood icon, was supposed to be untouchable. Yet in 1971, his plane vanished into the fog, and with it, the man who had once seemed indestructible. For 50 years, we were told it was just bad weather, pilot error, a tragic accident. But now, newly uncovered documents and witness accounts tell a far darker story. One involving secret programs, government silence, and a hero who may have known too much. Was Audie Murphy really brought down by the clouds, or by something, or someone, far more deliberate? The mystery is finally being solved, and the truth isn't good. From orphan to war legend, to grasp the scale of what happened to Audie Murphy, you have to know where he came from. Born in 1925 to poor sharecroppers in Hunt County, Texas, he was the 7th of 12 children and grew up knowing only hardship. His father walked out when he was young, and when his mother died in 1941, 16-year-old Audie was left to hold his family together. He never had a childhood, said biographer Robert Williams. He understood responsibility in ways most adults never do. By 8, he was hunting to feed his siblings. By 10, he was picking cotton to keep them alive. What could have crushed most people instead built the toughness that would one day make him a legend. He dropped out of school but taught himself to shoot with deadly precision. The Army didn't make Audie Murphy. Life did. Every hardship, every sleepless night, every sacrifice became the training ground for the hero he would become. Pearl Harbor changed everything. When America entered World War II, Audie Murphy was determined to fight. He tried joining the Marines, the Navy, even the paratroopers, but at 5 feet 5 inches and just 112 pounds, they all turned him away. Refusing to give up, he lied about his age and finally convinced the Army to take him in 1942, just after his 17th birthday. What followed was extraordinary. The small, quiet farm boy became the most decorated soldier of World War II, fighting in 9 major campaigns, earning 33 medals, and killing more than 240 enemy soldiers. He wasn't just brave, said combat veteran Frank Morgan. He was unnervingly calm under fire. Where others froze, Murphy came alive, the hero who wouldn't break. On January 26, 1945, near Holtz, France, 19-year-old Audie Murphy did the impossible. With his unit nearly wiped out and wounded himself, he climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and used its machine gun to hold off an entire German company, then led a counterattack. For that, he earned the Medal of Honor. It was like standing on a box of dynamite, Murphy later said. I was scared, and I was fighting. By the end of the war, he'd received every U.S. combat medal and 5 more from France and Belgium. His face was on Life magazine, America's youngest, most decorated hero. But surviving the war would be the easy part. The country that made him a hero, said journalist Michael Thorne, would one day betray him. Hollywood fame, private pain. Audie Murphy's move to Hollywood seemed like a dream. Actor James Cagney spotted him on the cover of Life and brought him west. He had no training, no connections, but his quiet authenticity made him magnetic. Universal signed him immediately, and audiences loved him, especially in westerns where his real grit showed. Over the next 20 years, he starred in more than 40 films. His biggest hit came in To Hell and Back, 1955, playing himself in the story of his own wartime heroism. It became Universal's top-grossing film for 2 decades, but behind the fame, he was falling apart. Haunted by what we now call PTSD, Murphy slept with a loaded gun, battled insomnia, and lived on sleeping pills. I live in a nightmare, he admitted. A real one when I sleep and a daylight one when I wake up. His friend Dale Robertson said it best. Audie never really came home from the war. Still, he refused to hide his pain. Long before it was acceptable, Murphy spoke openly about the mental wounds of combat, honesty that made him brave all over again. But this time, his courage would make him dangerous to the very institutions he once served. A hero at war with himself. Audie Murphy's private life often mirrored his inner battles. His first marriage to actress Wanda Hendricks ended after 2 years. She later revealed he once held her at gunpoint during a nightmare. His second marriage, to airline stewardess Pamela Archer, was steadier and gave him 2 sons. Pamela gave him the stability he'd never known, said biographer David Johnson. She protected him when the nightmares came. By the late 1960s, Murphy had turned his focus to helping veterans, visiting hospitals, testifying before Congress, and exposing government neglect. He was hearing things from inside the system, said journalist Michael Thorne, stories that powerful people didn't want told. As Hollywood moved on from traditional heroes, Murphy's career faded. Bad investments and tax problems followed, issues some believe worsened as he spoke out about veterans' rights. Then came a project that may have sealed his fate. In 1970, Murphy began researching a TV series about veteran struggles. What started as entertainment quickly turned into an investigation, one that uncovered disturbing truths inside the VA. By early 1971, he was asking questions that made the wrong people nervous. The crash that never made sense. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy boarded a twin-engine Aero Commander 680 in Martinsville, Virginia, bound for a business meeting. Despite poor weather, pilot Herman Butler, a veteran with over 8,000 flight hours, decided to take off. 14 minutes later, the plane slammed into Brush Mountain, killing all 6 on board. The official report blamed pilot error, but many never believed it. Butler was no amateur, said aviation expert Richard Collins. His decision to fly that day makes no sense. Former NTSB investigator Paul Martinez agreed, noting that crucial evidence was never analyzed and conflicting witness accounts were ignored. Even the flight path was baffling. He was flying far too low for that terrain, said ex-FAA investigator Thomas Rawlings. This wasn't a mistake a pilot like Butler would make. For decades, the crash was written off as tragedy, but the deeper experts looked, the less the story added up. A flight full of red flags. What baffled investigators most was pilot Herman Butler's behavior. He was flying far below the minimum safe altitude, a move veteran pilot Thomas Rawlings called deliberately dangerous. For someone with Butler's experience, it made no sense. The wreckage deepened the mystery. Key parts of the plane were missing, and debris was scattered in ways that didn't match a normal crash. There were components that simply shouldn't have vanished, said aviation expert Rebecca Chen. Later reviews of crash photos found metal stress patterns, suggesting some parts broke before impact, not after. Even Butler's background raised eyebrows. Once described as a private pilot, he had ties to government contractors and Air America, a known CIA-linked airline. These aren't the credentials of a typical charter pilot, said former intelligence analyst Sarah Jennings. They point to someone with a far more complicated past. The witnesses no one listened to. The most unsettling details came from witnesses the official report largely ignored. 3 people claimed they heard an explosion before the plane went down, but investigators dismissed it as the sound of impact. One of them, Harold Simmons, was just 17 at the time. Until his death in 2018, he stood by what he heard. It was in the air, and then the plane came down. There was a boom, then 5 or 6 seconds later, the crash. They weren't the same sound. Audie's widow, Pamela Murphy, never believed it was an accident either. "Your father survived hundreds of missions," she told their son Terry. "He wouldn't fly with someone he didn't trust." For decades, their doubts were brushed aside, until 2018. That year, newly declassified Vietnam-era files, modern forensic analysis, and long silent witnesses revealed a far darker story than anyone had imagined. New evidence, dark revelations. In the months before his death, Audie Murphy had been developing a TV series about veterans' experiences with the VA. But during his research, he stumbled onto something far darker: signs of corruption, missing funds, and what appeared to be secret government experiments on veterans. Murphy found evidence that VA resources were being diverted for classified research, explained investigative journalist Michael Thorne. Those close to him said he had uncovered proof of unauthorized psychological testing, the kind later linked to CIA programs like MK Ultra. By early 1971, Murphy had gathered names, dates, and documents, tracing money from the VA to intelligence front companies. He connected VA hospitals, defense contractors, and covert behavior modification programs, said historian Dr. Eleanor Whitfield. It wasn't speculation, it was evidence. For the agencies involved, Murphy's credibility made him dangerous. He wasn't just any whistleblower, Thorne noted. He was Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier in U.S. history. If he spoke, the nation would listen. According to recently analyzed files, Murphy had scheduled meetings with reporters from the Washington Post and the New York Times for June 1971, interviews he would never attend. The timing is damning, Thorne said. He died just days before he was set to go public. Adding to the mystery, records show Murphy had contacted his lawyer about creating a legal defense fund for VA whistleblowers, insiders who wanted to expose corruption but feared retaliation. The paperwork for that fund was later found in his briefcase at the crash site, though it never appeared in the official inventory. Even more alarming was a new forensic review of the crash evidence. Using modern technology, investigators discovered clear signs of tampering with the plane's control systems. There are tool marks on key components that don't match factory work or routine maintenance, explained aviation expert James Michaels. They suggest someone modified the controls in a way that would cause failure mid-air, but stay hidden during inspection. The analysis pointed to deliberate weakening of the elevator control cables, making the plane nearly impossible to recover once turbulence hit. It was the perfect sabotage, Michaels said, untraceable, deadly, and easily blamed on bad weather. Then, in 2020, a former Martinsville airport technician came forward. He swore he saw two unknown men working on Murphy's plane the night before the crash, men who weren't part of the regular crew. They had credentials, so I didn't question it, he said, but when I mentioned it later, my boss told me to forget what I saw. I've lived with that ever since further analysis of the plane's wreckage only deepened suspicion. Tests on fragments from the elevator controls showed signs of tampering, not wear or defects. The metal appeared deliberately scored, weakened just enough to fail under stress while looking like a normal malfunction. Then came the most shocking revelation. A retired intelligence operative, now in his 90s, swore in an affidavit that Murphy's death was part of a containment operation, authorized at the highest levels after he was labeled a threat to classified programs. His account matched flight records showing known intelligence assets in the area days before the crash. These kinds of operations weren't rare back then, said former CIA historian Dr. Robert Garrison, referencing the Church Committee's later findings of domestic surveillance and cover-ups. Even more disturbing were the internal memos after the crash. One, dated June 3, 1971, read, "Investigation proceeding as planned with expected conclusions. All assets in place to manage any deviations from narrative." As journalist Michael Thorne summarized, the evidence doesn't just hint at government involvement. It points to a coordinated assassination of America's most decorated hero, silenced for trying to protect his fellow veterans' legacy shadowed by betrayal. For Audie Murphy's family, the truth has been both a relief and a heartbreak. His son, Terry Murphy, has spent years demanding a new investigation into his father's death. "The idea that he simply died in an accident never sat right with us," Terry said. "Now we know. He was silenced because he refused to stay silent about what was happening to veterans." His fight for answers has been met with endless roadblocks, redacted files, vanishing evidence, and uncooperative agencies still citing national security after more than 50 years. "It's like chasing a puzzle where someone keeps hiding the pieces," Terry said. "But we're not giving up. My father never did." Veterans groups have since joined the cause, seeing Murphy's story as symbolic of a larger betrayal. "Audie Murphy is still fighting for veterans," said Vietnam veteran James Peterson. "If a man like him could be silenced for speaking up, what hope did the rest of us ever have?" The fight for truth continues. In 2022, a bipartisan group of senators called for an independent commission to investigate Murphy's death and the secret programs he may have uncovered. The Department of Defense and VA acknowledged the request, but took no real action. "The resistance speaks volumes," said political analyst Dr. Margaret Chen. "If there's nothing to hide, release the files. Let the evidence speak. The ongoing secrecy suggests there are still truths the government doesn't want revealed, even 50 years later. If the allegations are true, the betrayal goes far beyond one man." "Murphy risked his life defending freedom," said historian William Porter. "If he was killed for exposing similar abuses at home, that's a betrayal almost beyond belief." Today, historians see Murphy not just as a war hero, but as a man who kept fighting, this time for veterans betrayed by their own government. As Dr. Elena Rodriguez puts it, his battlefield simply moved from Europe to Washington, and it may have cost him his life, the final battle for truth. Audie Murphy's lifelong fight didn't end on the battlefield. It just changed form. His openness about PTSD, rare for his time, became the foundation of his advocacy for veterans. His own trauma gave him empathy and made him dangerous to those who wanted silence, said psychologist Dr. Matthew Sullivan. He understood how easily vulnerable veterans could be exploited. By speaking publicly about his struggles, Murphy challenged a system that denied the psychological cost of war. "Real men weren't supposed to break," noted advocate Sarah Martinez. Murphy's honesty shattered that illusion, and that made him a threat. "The tragedy, as his son Terry put it, is that my father may have been betrayed by the country he fought for, just for trying to protect his fellow soldiers." More than 50 years later, declassified files and new witnesses suggest his death was no accident, but a cover-up, one that turned America's greatest hero into its most haunting victim. "The worst thing we could do is look away," said historian William Porter. "Murphy never turned from danger. Now it's our turn to face the truth." As more evidence surfaces, Audie Murphy's story is no longer just about valor. It's about accountability, courage, and the high cost of telling the truth. Even in death, he's still fighting, and perhaps finally winning. So after all the evidence, declassified files, and decades of silence, one question remains. Was Audie Murphy's death really an accident, or was America's greatest hero silenced for uncovering the truth? The deeper you look, the harder it becomes to believe the official story. What do you think happened that foggy day in 1971? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone. And if you want more investigations like this one, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories uncovering the hidden truths behind Hollywood and history.